Hello, everyone, and welcome to another OWASP night. This is Rick, obviously, and thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this. Tonight, we have a special guest, Dr. Yenni Tim from the University of New South Wales. She does some fantastic research about cybersecurity resilience and other very important subjects, and she has honored us today with some nice discussion about the bridging the cyber skill gap. So, without any further ado, I'm going to pass it down to Yenni. Thank you very much, Yenni, and welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me. So, hi everyone, my name is Yenni, and I'm currently a senior lecturer at the School of Information Systems, UNSW Business School. So, as we talked about earlier, so I research on cyber resilience. I also teach in this area. So, a big part of my research is focusing on understanding the information security behaviors in organizations. So I use qualitative and also design research methodology to really look at the issue of vulnerable security behaviors and design interventions to help improve it. And today I'm going to share my perspective on the cybersecurity skills gaps issue, which is actually a topic that has been discussed quite a bit in the industry. And we will talk about what exactly are the gaps, why the gaps emerge, which I think could be even more important than talking about the what. And then I will also share how higher education and the industry can work more closely together to bridge the gaps. And I'm happy to take any questions in the end. I'll have I will go on for maybe about 15 minutes, and I will have time for Q&A in the end. And then I guess we can get started. So I believe the audience today, whether you are maybe a security practitioner, or maybe you are a student or an educator or researcher like myself, I think all of us have seen something like this almost every other day on the news. So we know that cyber attacks and cyber breaches are certainly one really prominent topic, but cybersecurity skill gaps might be really a close second. And we have seen a lot of articles talking about the impact of cybersecurity skill shortage and how this issue could make organizations or our society more vulnerable. So as a researcher and also an educator who focuses a lot on making sure that our students are career ready, I'm certainly interested in this topic. And the first thing I always do when I'm interested in a topic is to see what the research is telling us and what the data suggests. So before I share my own perspective about this issue, we will first look at some data. So I think most people here would be familiar with ISC Square. So they publish an annual report on cybersecurity workforce, which is a very comprehensive study. And they provide their own ways to measure and quantify the skill gaps. So I wouldn't repeat the study here, but I definitely would recommend everyone who is interested in this topic to take a look. And today I'm going to talk about a few of the analysis that they have performed for 2020, which I think would help us a lot in setting the stage for today's discussion. So first of all, we'll look at the pie chart. And this is a global pie chart. I'll give everyone a few seconds to take a closer look. All right, so what this pie chart shows us is that globally, there are 64% of cybersecurity professionals report a staff shortage at their own organization. And specifically, 42% reported slight shortage, but 22% reported a significant shortage. And if we look at the little diagram on the right, that is a number that represents ISC Square's estimation of current cybersecurity workforce versus the size of the workforce gap, which is indicated in parentheses. So if we are looking at the example of Australia, we are currently having a gap around the size of 27,000 and more people. So if we zoom out a little bit and look at the global situation, internationally, we need around 3.12 million more people to join the cybersecurity workforce. And the gap in the Asia Pacific region specifically is the largest, and that's at more than 2 million. So I'm sure 3.1 million is a significant number, but it's worth noting that this is actually an improvement from the 4 million gap that was identified by ISC Square in 2019. But again, 2020 being such an unusual year, the reduced gap may not be indicative because we might not be seeing, much more people coming into cyber, but it may be just the outcome of a reduced demand because in the industry, as we all know, we have diminishing business requirements during the global pandemic. But now I think we can say that there is a gap and it's a significant one for all of us, but we still didn't know why the gap exists. So I'm really a big fan of talking about why, because I think you really need to understand why certain problem exists before you can talk about how to solve them. So why cybersecurity skill gaps exist is definitely a very difficult question, especially if I'm putting on my researcher's hat. I think it's a very difficult question because we won't be able to get perfect data, very difficult, or perform, perfect studies that can tell us precisely why is there a gap. But today I'm going to just offer my perspective, which is coming from a cybersecurity researcher's hat and an educator's point of view. And of course, this is only one perspective among the many, many other perspectives that could, be taken to interpret this situation. So I see that the gap arises from a combination of three factors. I call them availability, ability, or basically quality, and alignment. So I will explain what that three factors mean. First of all, I think we have an issue of availability, and that simply means we don't have enough candidates joining the industry. And if we really explore further and ask why, again, why we don't have enough people or interest, that could again lead us to a combination of factors. For example, we know that the demand for cybersecurity professionals has increased exponentially, especially in the past decade, but the supply side has not kept up. So that could be, one contributing factor. But it could also be an awareness issue because given the diverse nature of the industry, we have really different roles, different skill sets that we need. It is actually quite overwhelming for people to navigate, especially I work with students a lot. And I think especially those students who are looking for entry-level positions in the cybersecurity industry, they would find it very difficult to navigate, and they are unsure whether there's a appropriate place for them in this industry. So overall, those could be blockers that stop people from joining the industry. So this is a quantity issue. We simply do not have enough people. And the next factor I think that contributes to this gap is kind of like a quality issue. So I have been, looking or observing about this topic of skill gaps maybe since 3 years ago. So I've seen lots of reports that talks about we have a talent gap where we don't have people who actually can do the job that we need them to do. But I think it's important to also acknowledge the nature of this industry, because the changing nature of technology landscape, we really need to acknowledge that it is not an easy task for people to keep up with the development. We know that as soon as a new technology is being introduced, a whole new set of threats, vulnerabilities, and human behaviors and risks are also being introduced. So it is not surprising if we say that organizations may have difficulties in identifying people who have the right skills to fill some positions. Not all, but maybe some of the urgent positions. And then going back to the entry-level discussion, right? So if we are talking about how we train entry-level roles, so people who are fresh graduates, we need to again acknowledge that the education that the graduates have just completed, which usually takes about 3 to 4 years, may be obsolete by the time they get to the job market, again because of the changing nature of this industry. But it's not a unique problem for this industry, of course, but it's something that we observe particularly maybe in cybersecurity industry and a few others. So in other words, we need a different way to provide not only the most relevant, the most up-to-date content, but from my perspective, I think it is even more important for us to cultivate graduates who are adaptive. So we wanted to make sure that graduates have the capacity to learn on the job, to pick up new knowledge, pick up new technologies, and really to keep up with the technology advancement. And of course, organizations play a role in this as well, because they need to continuously invest in their people in terms of providing learning opportunities, upskilling opportunities. But to summarize, the second factor is a quality issue. So the first was quantity, and then we might have a quality issue. And finally, the third factor is what I call as alignment. And by that, I mean, sometimes organizations do not know where to look or who to look for, and they might actually have requirements that are in fact unrealistic. So again, this goes back to the nature of this industry being fast changing, being multidisciplinary, and some organizations, not all, are not being inclusive enough. They are not being flexible enough and responsible enough in recruitment and in reskilling. So some examples can be, last week, I think I was looking at a job description for an entry-level position in the industry. And that company was looking for someone to fill an entry-level job, but the requirements that was provided on that job description includes things like proven technical skills from real-world projects, from real experience, having an understanding about business, have a few cybersecurity certifications, being a team player, but also needs to be a good presenter to be able to, communicate different things to non-cyber people. And there are a lot more other, good to have requirements in that one job description. So in that case, it's really not realistic to try to find someone who can fulfill all that, and especially when we are talking about entry-level position. And in terms of recruitment, I also wanted to highlight there is a limited consideration for people who don't fit in certain stereotypes. So that will lead to certain groups being underrepresented in the industry. And I'll talk more about that later. So these are the three factors. And I would like to highlight that in most cases, it is a combination of these factors that bring to a gap or an issue. So to further understand how that three factors or these three factors play out in practice, I first reach out to my students. So for the past 3 years, I have asked undergraduate students who are studying an information systems degree with us or a business degree such as commerce, finance, but these students have never taken a cybersecurity course before. So I asked them the question of what do they think about a career in cybersecurity? And this word cloud is what we get. So take a look at the word cloud, and I would say it's not surprising, but there is a lot of students who think that cybersecurity is all about the hackers in hoodies, right? So it's a very technical position. It is very challenging, like the challenging, stress, changing, difficult, constantly. So those keywords. And it's a position that has lots of responsibilities. But of course, students also pointed out that cybersecurity jobs may pay really well. So there's salary, pay kind of keywords in the word cloud. And some of these points, as we know, are not exactly wrong, but we certainly see the unhelpful stereotype about cybersecurity being purely a technical job. So such stereotype definitely contributes at least to the availability factor that we just discussed earlier, because we'll have less people willing to enter this industry because they don't see a fit. Maybe they don't see how their skill sets can be applied, and maybe they are just not interested in technical positions. So after asking the students and really interact with them, teaching cybersecurity at the business school, I feel like I am really interested, and I would like to zoom in, the problem, understand it even further. So I analyzed the problem by considering the relationship between the industry, so the cybersecurity industry or industry in general, higher education, and students. So I've been thinking about this problem a few years ago. And when I was first thinking about the problem, I realized that the three components that we have right now, basically they are not connected. There are gaps in this trilateral relationship. If we look at the industry, there are issues related to being clear about the skill sets that you actually need. So it's even related to maybe taking the time to reflect on what are reasonable requirements and what skill sets you absolutely need and what you can train on the job. And there are also issues related to being inclusive and actually communicate the requirements in terms of the skill sets you need, the positions that you are looking to fill, and making such requirements visible to the educators in the higher ed industry, and also to the students that the organizations are trying to attract. So there is a gap there from if we look at the industry component. So moving on to the educators component. Again, we need to acknowledge that we are talking about a domain that is constantly changing. So it comes with no surprise if we say the traditional lecturing of content is not working anymore. Again, not a problem that is unique for cybersecurity industry, but because we are talking about this today, that's something worth highlighting. Which means myself as an educator, when I was reflecting on this issue, we realized that we do need to engage with the industry and with the students much more closely. And the role of educators in today's environment has shifted. So we are no longer a content provider. I don't think we are, the master, and only we know the content, and students are here to actually absorb the content from us. But our role is really shifting to more of a facilitator. And when I say facilitator, it involves ensuring that our students actually get exposed to the latest developments, and that we need help or collaboration with the industry. But we also, as a facilitator, we wanted to support students in developing their skills. And by skills, I mean transferable skills, such as being adaptive, being proactive, confident, able to critically analyze a problem, able to solve a problem, and overall being very resilient. So we wanted to support students to be someone who are able to keep up with the constant change and be very proactive in being the future leaders as well. And finally, if we shift to the final component on the diagram, let's look at the gap from a student's point of view. And that's mainly coming from a few things. First, not being aware of what is required by the industry. So students are not really sure where they can contribute in the cybersecurity industry because there's information gap, there's a communication gap right there. And even for those students who are already interested in joining the cyber workforce, they may actually feel that they are not prepared enough. So a lot of them would, say that they are not sure if they are able to handle the challenge, even though they are really interested. So this is the perspective that I've taken to really analyze and understand the gap, obviously in the context of within the higher education context. So now that we know this is the problem, right? So we talk about the problem itself, why the problem exists, at least from a higher education perspective. I would then share an example of what we have done at UNSW Business School and talk about how the same model or similar approaches can be used by many other higher education institutions to empower this trilateral relationship, really bridge the gap between industry, higher education, and students, and eventually contributes to minimizing this problem that we are talking about today. So the example that I'm going to talk about today is called the Sandbox education program. But before I talk about what it is and how it works, I would like to again share about the why. So a brief story about how it started. As we discussed earlier, back in 2018, I started thinking about the problem, and I created a cybersecurity course. I made it a compulsory course for students who are studying our Bachelor of Information Systems degree. But when I was designing the course and running the course, I soon realized a few issues. First of all, I'm a researcher working actively in this space. So I research on cybersecurity, and I work with organizations frequently to understand what's going on. But even for someone who has this active participation in the space, I find it challenging to keep up with all the new developments in the industry. So my goal when I first designed the cybersecurity course, because we are not aiming to really focusing on a very specific area in the cybersecurity, but we wanted to provide students with an appreciation and a holistic overview of cybersecurity, the people, processes, and technology. So to achieve that goal, I realized as an educator, I need to work with the industry. And that is not just to bring in the most relevant content. That's important. That's one point. But more importantly, I think it's to really have that discussion about what are the most important issues or most relevant challenges that the industry practitioners, so security practitioners, are dealing with every day at their job. Because that is not something that we would be able to really gain an awareness if we are not really someone who is actively engaged, in the challenges every day. So that is the first identified kind of need and a realization that I have developed. But the second point is I also observe how students learn as a lecturer. So I observe that there's always a small group of students who perform particularly well. So that's expected, but I would like to understand why. So I try to, engage with these students, and slowly I realized there's something in common among these high-performing students who are able to really just take on a problem, be very confident, able to critically analyze the problem, able to solve it, being very adaptive. So the one thing that is in common among these students is that all of them have the opportunities to work on real life projects. So usually that was done through internships, which we all know, I believe, internships are highly limited. So as soon as I realized that, students who have real world exposure, who have been really trying to solve open-ended challenges, they are much more resilient, they are a better learner. The question that I asked myself back in 2018 was, if I can't send all my students out for an internship, can I actually bring the real world into the classrooms? So that's really how the Sandbox model was created. And later we created a program to really help more people to implement the model. So before I discuss further, let me clarify that the model is created to bridge the gap between industry, educators, and students, which is beyond cybersecurity industry. But for today's discussion, we'll focus on how we use a model to make young graduates more aware of their options in the cybersecurity industry, and also to diminish the unhelpful stereotypes of the cyber workforce, so the hackers in hoodies, and to support students to gain real-world experience by solving real cybersecurity projects, which are what the industry practitioners working on every day. And eventually, through enabling all that, we contribute to bridge the gap, including promoting the involvement of underrepresented groups in the cybersecurity industry. So the intention is to empower industry to work closely with higher education. And firstly, that's to make sure that the learning live up to the current and future needs in the industry. But it is also to provide a platform for industry to work directly with our students. By doing so, they would be able to communicate their needs, their requirements, and on top of that, they are also able to gain fresh perspectives from our young and bright students on addressing challenges that we have in the industry. So that is essentially the overview of how the model works. The name Sandbox was inspired by software sandbox, because I had a background in software engineering, and I've used Sandbox or run my software in a sandbox environment a lot. And that's where, people test out their new applications, and the environment, the sandbox, is often considered as a segregated and safe environment. So developers would test their software and see how the software would actually work in the actual environment before deploying it live. So the same thing can happen in the classroom. We created sandboxes in our classrooms by first simulating that professional working environment. So when we think about the professional working environment or the industry, the way it works is it's often project-based, or in the education terminologies, we call that challenge-driven. So the first nature or first characteristic of the Sandbox model is to ensure that learning starts from a challenge. So imagine in an industry where people get assigned a project and then they started to really look at the project. What is the problem? How do I solve it? What do I need to learn? It's exactly the same model in a Sandbox course. So when I say Sandbox, it is essentially courses that students are already taking. So what we are doing is we transform existing courses that usually would be more content-based to a lot more project-based. So if we look at a scale from knowing to doing, we are essentially moving towards the doing side. So we believe in learning by doing, and creating the sandboxes in courses means that we focus on letting students work on real projects and learn from that. And the way it works in terms of how industry is being engaged is that we start first by working with industry practitioners to select relevant problems for our students to work on. For example, recently we worked with an information security director, and who is trying to identify new ways to promote phishing resilience. So we can really just bring that project into the cybersecurity course and let students try it out and work on it. So if we look at a diagram, just to explain a little bit further, in a sandbox environment, students basically kickstart their learning with a purpose. And that purpose is to complete that project or to solve the challenge. And this is a kind of like a minor change to how we usually teach. We start with providing content. So we say, let's learn about chapter 1 to chapter 5. And then we work on, an exercise, or work on a project that is based on some case studies. And then we see if students can apply their learning that way. But we really flip that around and we say, this is a real project coming from an industry practitioner. There is a real need right here, and you are going to learn with the purpose or the goal of solving this challenge. So the practitioners are there to tell the students the significance of the problem and how relevant it is. So we'll bring in the industry practitioners. They will then do a session and interact with students to tell them, this problem is what I face right here in this particular organization. And here are the things that we have tried to do. And here are the challenges. And here are the reasons why we need to solve this problem. So students get to see that real need. And more importantly, they get to work together with the industry practitioners as well as educators to experiment, because it's, again, a sandbox environment, a safe space for students to really experiment, collaborate as if they are actually working in the industry, but they get feedback, they get a controlled or a segregated environment in the university where they can safely experiment, fail, and then try again. So that's a high-level introduction about the sandbox model. But now let's look at a concrete example. So what exactly have we done in terms of cybersecurity? So I created sandboxes in my cybersecurity course that I mentioned earlier. We, so far since 2018, we have worked with more than 25 representatives from companies such as Ernst & Young, Salesforce, IAG, KPMG, Australian Red Cross, and APRA. So working with these companies, the most important part is really about identifying the issues, the challenges, the projects that are relevant for the cybersecurity industry today. So since 2018, we have more than 800 students who have completed the projects provided by these industry partners. The scale itself is much bigger than what we can achieve, what can be achieved by internship placements, because we have really lots of students who don't have access to those valuable internship opportunities, and creating sandboxes and bringing in the industry people and the real projects, we basically created a mini internships experience in the classrooms. So if we kind of talk about how it works, first thing is the industry practitioners would present the challenge or the project to the students on day one. So they haven't learned anything yet, but we have industry mentors coming in to talk about, here is the challenge that I'm trying to solve at work every day. And they will provide the context as to how they have been trying to address those challenges and why is it important. And students, without learning anything, they learn that there is a goal. So they start with an end in mind. So they know that they need to create solutions to this challenge. And then they will learn the concepts. They will learn the knowledge from, learning about the terminologies in cybersecurity. They learn about the latest framework that is being used in the industry that they will need to complete the project. And so far, just in this one course alone, if we are talking about cybersecurity, we have students created more than 170 unique solutions. So they work in groups, and we have more than 170 groups that have completed the projects and the challenges proposed by industry partners. A lot of these challenges are real challenges that the industry partners are really trying to address, and they get the fresh perspective from our students. So as you can see, there are projects related to maturity assessments where students have to use latest framework like the Essential 8, NIST framework, CPS 234, to analyze and to assess the maturity of actual organization. And we have education and training awareness programs where students design gamified solution and a lot more interesting and innovative ways to really train the employees. We have phishing resilience dashboards. We have cloud computing strategic plan, incident response plan. We also have cybersecurity, open intelligence, or knowledge sharing platforms. So all of these are actual and real projects that companies would like to hear, innovation, would like to get some perspectives, but also students get to really work on something that they can see a clear relevance. So in the past 3 years, we have had a lot of amazing outcomes from running these sandboxes. So students felt much more prepared, as you can see from just one quote that we provide today, because they get to work with industry practitioners to solve an actual project. And we also have our industry mentors suggested that the collaboration has been highly beneficial for them, mutually beneficial, because, for example, in 2019, we have Ernst & Young, EY, immediately offered employments to 6 of our students right after the Sandbox course was concluded because of their outstanding performance in the classrooms. So it's really, really amazing outcomes that leads to employment. And we also have students, feeling more confident. I think what is important that goes beyond having a comprehension on the content, the latest cybersecurity content, students also picked up transferable skills, such as professional communication, problem solving, teamwork, and so on. And they felt much more confident to really go to the workplace, even though, they might not have a lot of real actual internship experience. And we also have what we discussed earlier about, the stereotype around cybersecurity being too technical. But we have students who used to think that, and they think that, there's no way I'm going to work in the cybersecurity industry. But after completed projects, that got feedback from industry security practitioners, they realized that they actually can contribute something in this industry. And a lot of them felt a lot more interested in what this career would involve. And a lot of them have eventually chosen a cybersecurity career because they have had that hands-on experience. They know that they would be able to work on something like this, and they know how they could fit in this career path. So overall, by removing the stigma of what a cybersecurity career looks like, we can open this career choice to much more people, especially those young talents who are currently underrepresented in the sector, including female students, and also young graduates who are less technically minded, but they have a lot of other skill sets to contribute. So overall, it is not just about increasing the talent pool, but also diversifying it and also creating students who are, ready to work on real world problems, which are really, really different from textbook or case study questions. So in addition to promoting awareness, which we have discussed, and having more graduates to join the industry, the educators and the industry also benefit from having this relationship, because you will have research collaboration that will eventually also contribute back to the industry. So for example, myself, I have been working with a lot of our Sandbox industry partners on research as a result of running a successful Sandbox course. So with that, we are able to contribute more knowledge, more advancement back into the industry as well. So almost there. To summarize and also to propose action moving forward, let's go back to the problem that we have discussed earlier. So we talked about the 3 factors that contribute to the gap, and we wanted to understand how does a closer collaboration between the higher education and the industry could contribute to bridging the gap. So first of all, when we talk about availability, the engagement of industry practitioners in courses certainly creates opportunities for students to get to know the industry much better. So that's one thing, awareness. But more importantly, it is the hands-on, the real actual problem-solving experience that will help to promote interest. And if we talk about cybersecurity industry, it is an industry that really needs diverse skill sets. So by having students from different backgrounds, someone who have never considered working in this industry before, to solve a challenge, a real challenge, there is definitely awareness, interest, and confidence. So increased confidence among the students on what they could potentially contribute in the industry. So the active participation of industry definitely brings more talents into the cyber workforce, which contributes to the quantity problem that we discussed earlier. And the second would be the quality. So in a sandbox environment, students learn by doing. So what we see is that students not just, learning about the content or the knowledge, but they also pick up skills that are very important for them to be able to keep up with the developments in this industry. They will be proactive, they will be adaptive, they will be resilient. So with that, they will be able to learn quickly on the job and really keep up with the requirements and really thrive in this career. And finally, with industry, educators, and students working closely together in a sandbox, the requirements firstly would definitely be better communicated, because industry people will be able to really share what they need and what they are looking for directly with the students. And that happens all the time when we bring industry people in. That's like the one of the most common or popular questions that our students would have. And industry also get to see the different abilities of students being demonstrated, which means, when we talk about diversity, being flexible in recruitment and getting access to talents, when you actually get to work with these students, you would realize that they do have what is needed to, perform in this role that you are looking for. They may or may not have a cybersecurity certification, but is that the key requirement? Or maybe, being passionate and being fast learner, being very creative could also benefit your organization and could also contribute to the role that you are looking for. So the alignment issue is really something that we try to really minimize, because promoting diversity, that's something that I personally see very, very important in the cybersecurity industry. So to conclude, I see that the issues of skill gaps can at least be minimized by having more career-focused initiatives in higher education, and that requires really collaboration between the industry and educators and students. So I listed here the 3 principles of the Sandbox model: co-ownership, co-creation, and challenge-driven, because I think they also apply in the context of cybersecurity skill gaps. So it helps us to really understand what is going on. Firstly, co-ownership means that no single party is solely responsible for this. I've seen a lot of reports trying to, prompt a question about whether the higher education is responsible for not training people, or the organizations is responsible for not, providing training, providing learning opportunities. But I think it's really an issue that we need to work together. We need to co-own the problem in a sense. And by that, we can then make progress. So co-creation represents the collaborative relationship that we have discussed earlier, and the solutions that we can develop together. For example, creating sandboxes in classrooms is just one example that I would like to share with everyone here today, because I believe there are a lot more efforts that can be created in this space, and solutions that could be co-created, especially between industry and higher education. Lastly, challenge-driven is in the Sandbox model, it means learning is purposeful. So we started the learning process by giving students a challenge rather than giving them content. So the learning process is really about solving that challenge, and through that they learn by doing and learn with a clear goal in mind. But in the skill gaps context, I think it is important to understand what challenges are we facing. So the discussion today, a part of it is really about thinking why the challenges exist. So why is there a gap? There could be multiple explanations to it, but we need to understand the challenges that we are facing to derive effective solutions. So to really finalize the presentation and conclude, I would like to just say that we are seeing a lot more encouraging developments in this space today. So there are things like government schemes that promote collaboration between industry and higher education, and a lot more initiatives that are going on in businesses and so on. So there is definitely encouraging developments. And before I end the presentation and go to the Q&A, I also wanted to highlight that the scope of this presentation is about nurturing the new talents, but upskilling our existing workforce and promoting the transition from perhaps adjacent similar industries are also important steps that can contribute to this issue. So thank you so much for listening, and I'd love to take any questions or comments. But if you're not watching this live, please feel free to just reach out to me if you'd like to discuss further. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Jenny. That was very nice, very important and inspiring. Thank you. As a person who has been in your program mentoring to to two of your students, I can say it's worthwhile, and it gives a good opportunity to the young people. We need to do that. I think we, the senior people in the industry, we take ownership of this problem. We cannot continue blaming somebody else about this problem that is ours. So it is important. So thank you very much. Now let's proceed to questions. So we have one of these young people right here, Jack, and he will be reading the questions out. All right, Jack,
Awesome.
the floor is yours.
So we got first question is from Ty, and he is asking, why is there such a big gap in, I guess, Asia Pacific in particular?
Yeah, I would definitely refer that back to the report, because the data source is really collected by ISC Square. So I don't think I would be able to say for sure the exact reasons in terms of why APAC would have, a bigger gap. So definitely, Ty, if you can refer to the report, that would be great.
Yeah, awesome. The next one we've got is more of a comment from Vineet, sort of making a joke about having a CISP for an entry-level role, which is would be pretty awesome.
Which is actually happening. So yeah, it is really quite worrying sometimes.
Yeah.
And then And then the next one is from Darren, and he's asked, what about training and education opportunities that are not out of reach for people? Some of the higher certifications and degrees are quite expensive.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think that's a very, very good question. So this is also something that I think we need a lot more initiatives in this area. So for example, we would be able to do things that are outside of, higher education kind of context, because it is really about providing real opportunities and also learning experience for people. But that's something that is, I think, underdeveloped right now. So something that we wanted to really focus a lot more on. For example, at UNSW, we work with nonprofits to really create, education initiatives or innovation that could be scaled up with much less resources. But yeah, I agree about the need of, training, education, providing these opportunities for people who might not have access to a university degree.
Yeah, awesome. And then the next one we've got is from Vineet again, who asks, what advice would you give to people who want to join the cybersecurity industry but are coming from different roles, such as office, admin, and management?
This is one of the most popular questions that we have, especially when we have industry practitioners running the courses, cybersecurity courses, because we have students who don't have background in cybersecurity and they are interested. So I would say really highlight your strength in terms of the skills that you think you have that could be applied in the sector. For example, a lot of the things that we do in cybersecurity are not really about just doing pen testing or about doing, setting up network or secure network, but it's really about talking to people. For example, client organizations. If you are in a consultant role, then you do need to understand businesses a lot. So if you have that side of things, definitely emphasize that and say, I have ability, or I have the strength to really talk to people and understand their perspective, and I can communicate different things very effectively. And if you have critical thinking, that you have solved some projects in stressful situations, then you can highlight that as well, because you can say, I do have experience in solving projects within a short time, and I'm able to manage my time, manage people around me. So there are a lot of transferable skills that you can highlight when you try to go into this industry. And one thing I do need to say is, I think in Australia especially, because I usually help students with their career path. So I talk to, recruitment team a lot in big companies and small companies, but there's really positive developments in accepting people who don't come with that, the model that you would expect. For example, people who have security certification, security degree, but I can see that a lot of companies are being very, very open. Then they are willing to talk to people who are from a completely different background. I can give an example. I had a student who was having an art degree, so design degree, that has nothing to do with technology, but she eventually got an information security consultant role in a Big Four company. And that was really, really encouraging to see, because we are getting much more flexible in terms of what we are asking for from the graduates. So definitely give it a try.
The next one we've got is from Sarani, who just says hi.
Hi, Sarani.
And then the next one we've got is from Hector. He's sort of put in a couple of comments. I'll sort of try and summarize what it is that he's asking. So he's saying, what's the key to cybersecurity? Is it more about focusing on experience versus, chasing certificates for those entry-level roles?
I would say I can see Hector has another comment like later as well. So maybe I'll just address all that. So essentially, personally, from my experience working with recruitment team, I think experience matters more for entry-level role, because it is really about the candidate graduates having a holistic understanding about cybersecurity. So you do have to know, what's involved in cybersecurity in general. So let's say the people, processes, and technology. You do know, okay, there are these components. I might not be expert in, the technology part, but I do know that this is the current situation in terms of cybersecurity industry. And I can clearly identify that, maybe I can contribute in the processes by working in assessment team. So I can do maturity assessment, I can do risk assessment, or I can contribute in the people side of things because I have really keen understanding on human behaviors, people from psychology. They will be able to really work in that space. And in terms of the courses, CTF, yes, I would like to talk about that as well. So just last week, we had CTF in our course, and cybersecurity course, and that was a CTF that we designed with industry practitioners. And students were really excited about it, because from the activity, they are able to see the concepts that we talk about in the course. They actually see it in practice, and they went back home and talked to their parents to share with their entire family about it. So yeah, things like that I would recommend as well, because there are a lot of open source or like free CTF and free cybersecurity related hands-on exercises that you can get online. If you are really keen to practice your hands-on skills, definitely do that.
Yeah, awesome. And then the next one is from Matthew. So Matthew says that they did a cybersecurity course out of curiosity and TAFE and really loved it, and wants to get more into the industry, but discovered that the Cert 4 is not enough. What would you recommend that their next step be? They've started at Cert 4 in IT to skill up a bit more.
I think it depends on which area, the exact area that you would like to, join, in terms of whether you are looking for a more technical-oriented role or really more processes or business-oriented role. So knowing that will help you to really upskill yourself. And I'm not sure in terms of the positions, is it an entry level or is it slightly more senior? But if we are talking about graduates or entry level, the context is there are a lot of opportunities that are available, let's say in the university context, where you can work with academics to perform research, or you can reach out to work on some side projects in a sense. And you can also participate in activities like CTF and also hackathon that could be relevant if you are looking for a technical oriented role. So yeah, definitely do that.
Awesome. And then the next one is, can we just enroll directly in the Sandbox education program, or do we need to enroll in a degree to be part of it?
Yeah, for now, if you are in UNSW, so we actually have students started a Sandbox society because they wanted to do exactly that. They realized that, I wanted to do more industry projects, but my course doesn't have it yet, or I wanted to take more, courses, but I've done with my degree, almost done. So there is no new courses that I can take. So they actually started society. In that case, they work with us, the Sandbox program, to get industry people providing challenges and then work on it as mini kind of competition over a few weeks, and you have kind of the same experience as well.
Yeah, nice. And the next one is from Luke that says, great initiative and very needed. This really addresses the people that are already interested in security, but are there any strategies on getting people from schools when they are starting to make career decisions?
Yeah, so from schools, I'm assuming that's, is that university or just high schools? Because we are also, working to kind of implement this in the high school context as well. But because it is not just about cybersecurity, so we do engage with people or students who are really exploring their options when they are completing their degree. So we have some other sandboxes that are related to perhaps super or retirement planning, is risk management, marketing. So it's really a range of topics. Yeah, high school and primary school, that's a very, very good point. So we are trying to engage with high school right now to do that, because we see that a lot more education related to, basic level cybersecurity or things related to technology, those really started in high school. So that's something that we are working on right now, but not yet.
And then just one more from Vinay saying, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinay.
That's all we've got at the moment. So maybe we should just leave it maybe a couple more seconds, give people last chance to put questions in.
Are those questions coming from YouTube? Yeah.
They're all coming from YouTube at the moment. And yeah, we didn't get any from Discord.
You are on mute, Rick.
Sorry. I forgot to mention that we also in Discord. So if you guys in Discord, you can ask questions through there. But yeah, so supposed to be here, but yeah.
Okay. Yenni, thank you very much. I think that was an awesome talk.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming and giving us your time. It's been very enlightening, and thank you. It was fantastic. So, yeah.
Thanks, Sherry, especially for inviting me.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, we have a couple of thank yous coming in on the comments as well. But yeah, thanks, guys. Have a great evening further, and stay safe.
See you guys. Stay safe.